Thomas Edward Lawrence CBDSO was a British archaeologist, military officer, and diplomat. He was renowned for his liaison role during the Sinai and Palestine campaign and the Arab revolt against Ottoman Turkish rule of 1916–18. The breadth and variety of his activities and associations, and his ability to describe them vividly in writing, earned him international fame as Lawrence of Arabia, a title used for the 1962 film based on his First World War activities. Lawrence was born out of wedlock in Tremadog, Wales in August 1888 to Sir Thomas Chapman and Sarah Junner, a Scottish governess who was herself illegitimate. Chapman had left his wife and first family in Ireland to live with Junner, and they called themselves Mr. and Mrs. Lawrence. In the summer of 1896, the Lawrences moved to Oxford, where young Lawrence studied history at Jesus College in 1907–10 and graduated with first-class honours. He became a practicing archaeologist in the Middle East, working at various excavations with David George Hogarth and Leonard Woolley. In 1908, he joined the Oxford University Officers Training Corps and underwent a 2-year training course. In January 1914, before the outbreak of World War I, Lawrence was commissioned by the British Army to undertake a military survey of the Negev Desert while doing archaeological research. Lawrence's public image resulted in part from the sensationalized reporting of the Arab Revolt by American journalist Lowell Thomas, as well as from Lawrence's autobiographical account 7 Pillars of Wisdom. In 1935, Lawrence was fatally injured in a motorcycle accident in Dorset. Early life. Lawrence was born on 16 August 1888 in Tremadog, Carnarvonshire, Wales in a house named Gorfusfa, now known as Snowdon Lodge. His Anglo-Irish father Sir Thomas Chapman had left his wife Edith after he fell in love and had a son with Sarah Junner, a young Scotswoman who had been engaged as governess to his daughters. Sarah was the daughter of Elizabeth Junner and John Lawrence. Lawrence worked as a ship's carpenter and was a son of the household in which Elizabeth had been a servant. She was dismissed 4 months before Sarah was born. Sarah and Thomas lived in Wales, Brittany, and England under the name of Lawrence. In 1914, Sir Thomas inherited the Chapman baronetcy based at Killua Castle, the ancestral family home in County Westmeath, Ireland, but he and Sarah continued to live in England. Thomas Chapman and Sarah Junner did not marry but were known as Mr. and Mrs. Lawrence. They had 5 sons. Thomas Edward was the second eldest. From Wales the family moved to Kirkcudbright, Galloway in southwestern Scotland, then Dinard in Brittany, then to Jersey. In 1894–96, the family lived at Langley Lodge, set in private woods between the eastern borders of the New Forest and Southampton Water in Hampshire. Mr. Lawrence sailed and took the boys to watch yacht racing in the Solent. By the time they left, the 8-year-old Ned had developed a taste for the countryside and outdoor activities. In the summer of 1896, the Lawrences moved to 2 Polstead Road in Oxford, where they lived under the names of Mr. and Mrs. Lawrence until 1921. Lawrence attended the City of Oxford High School for Boys, where one of the 4 houses was later named Lawrence, in his honour. The school closed in 1966. Lawrence and one of his brothers became commissioned officers in the Church Lads Brigade at St Aldgate's Church. Lawrence claimed that he ran away from home circa 1905 and served for a few weeks as a boy soldier with the Royal Garrison Artillery at St Mawes Castle in Cornwall, from which he was bought out. No evidence of this appears in army records. Middle East archaeology. At the age of 15, Lawrence and his school friend, Cyril Beeson, bicycled around Berkshire, Buckinghamshire, and Oxfordshire, visited almost every village's parish church, studied their monuments and antiquities, and made rubbings of their monumental brasses. Lawrence and Beeson monitored building sites in Oxford and presented their finds to the Ashmolean Museum. The Ashmoleans' annual report for 1906 said that the 2 teenage boys, by incessant watchfulness, secured everything of antiquarian value which has been found. In the summers of 1906 and 1907, Lawrence and Beeson toured France by bicycle, collecting photographs, drawings, and measurements of medieval castles. From 1907 to 1910, Lawrence studied history at Jesus College, Oxford. In the summer of 1909, he set out alone on a 3-month walking tour of Crusader castles in Ottoman Syria, during which he traveled 1,000 miles on foot. Lawrence graduated with first-class honors after submitting a thesis entitled The Influence of the Crusades on European Military Architecture, to the end of the 12th century based on his field research with Beeson in France, notably in Challis, and his solo research in the Middle East. On completing his degree in 1910, Lawrence commenced postgraduate research in medieval pottery with a senior demi, a form of scholarship, at Magdalen College, Oxford, which he abandoned after he was offered the opportunity to become a practicing archaeologist in the Middle East, at Carchemish, in the expedition that D.G. Hogarth was setting up on behalf of the British Museum. Lawrence was a polyglot whose published work demonstrates competence in ancient Greek, Arabic, and French. In December 1910, he sailed for Beirut and on his arrival went to Jbeil, where he studied Arabic. He then went to work on the excavations at Carchemish, near Jerablus in northern Syria, where he worked under Hogarth and R. Campbell Thompson of the British Museum. He later stated that everything which he had accomplished he owed to Hogarth. The site lay near an important crossing on the Baghdad Railway, and knowledge that he gathered there was subsequently of considerable importance to the military. While excavating at Carchemish, Lawrence met Gertrude Bell, who later worked with him on setting up the state of Iraq. In late 1911, Lawrence returned to England for a brief sojourn. By November, he was en route to Beirut for a second season at Carchemish, where he was to work with Leonard Woolley. Before resuming work there, however, he briefly worked with Flinders Petrie at Kafr in Egypt. Between the spring of 1912 and the autumn of 1913, Lawrence stayed at Carchemish for 4 excavation seasons, residing in a spacious excavation house, newly built inside the site by himself and Woolley on behalf of the British Museum. In January 1914, Woolley and Lawrence were co-opted by the British military as an archaeological smokescreen for a British military survey of the Negev Desert. They were funded by the Palestine Exploration Fund to search for an area referred to in the Bible as the Wilderness of Zin. Along the way, they made an archaeological survey of the Negev Desert. The Negev was strategically important as, in the event of war, any Ottoman army attacking Egypt would have to cross it. Woolley and Lawrence subsequently published a report of the expedition's archaeological findings. But a more important result was an updated mapping of the area, with special attention to features of military relevance such as water sources. Lawrence also visited Aqaba and Petra. From March to May 1914, Lawrence worked again at Carchemish. Following the outbreak of hostilities in August 1914, Lawrence did not immediately enlist in the British Army. On the advice of S.F. Newcomb, he held back until October, when he was commissioned on the general list and posted to the intelligence staff in Cairo before the end of the year. Arab revolt. At the outbreak of the war, Lawrence was a university postgraduate researcher who had traveled extensively for years within the Ottoman Empire provinces of the Levant in Mesopotamia under his own name. As a result, he had become known to the Ottoman Interior Ministry authorities and the German technical advisors, traveling on the German-designed, built, and financed railways during the course of his research. The Arab Bureau of Britain's Foreign Office conceived a campaign of internal insurgency against the Ottoman Empire in the Middle East. The Arab Bureau had long felt that a campaign could pay great dividends by supporting the breakaway-minded tribes and regional challenges to the Turkish government's centralized rule of their empire, instigated and financed by outside powers and thereby diverting Turkish resources. The Arab Bureau had recognized the strategic value of what is today called the asymmetry of such conflict. The Ottoman authorities would have to devote from 100 to 1,000 times the resources to contain the threat of such an internal rebellion, compared to the Allies' cost of sponsoring it. Lawrence was posted to Cairo on the intelligence staff of the GOC Middle East on his formal enlistment in 1914 because of his first-hand knowledge of Syria, the Levant, and Mesopotamia. The British government in Egypt sent Lawrence to work with the Hashemite forces in the Arabian Hejaz in October 1916. There he met and worked with Herbert Garland. During the war, Lawrence fought alongside Arab irregular troops under the command of Emir Faisal, a son of Sharif Hussein of Mecca, in extended guerrilla operations against the armed forces of the Ottoman Empire. Lawrence obtained assistance from the Royal Navy to turn back an Ottoman attack on Yanbu in December 1916. Lawrence's major contribution to the revolt was convincing the Arab leaders to coordinate their actions in support of British strategy. He persuaded the Arabs not to make a frontal assault on the Ottoman stronghold in Medina but to allow the Turkish army to tie up troops in the city garrison. The Arabs were then free to direct most of their attention to the Turks' weak point, the Hejaz Railway that supplied the garrison. This vastly expanded the battlefield and tied up even more Ottoman troops, who were then forced to protect the railway and repair the constant damage. Lawrence developed a close relationship with Faisal, whose Arab Northern Army became the main beneficiary of British aid. On January 3, 1917, Lawrence went off on his first desert raid with 35 armed tribesmen. Under cover of darkness, they rode their camels out of camp, dismounted, and scrambled up a steep hill overlooking a Turkish encampment, which they peppered with rifle fire until driven off. Returning, they came across 2 Turks relieving themselves, and took them back to camp for questioning. That minor triumph was later counterbalanced by a small tragedy when Lawrence had to personally execute a member of his own band to prevent a crippling blood feud from breaking out, a deed that haunted him for the rest of his life. At the end of March, Lawrence set off on his first raid against the railway, a Turkish station at Abu el-Nam. After carefully reconnoitering it, Lawrence crept down to the lines at nightfall and laid a Garland mine under the tracks, cutting the telegraph wires as he left. The next morning, the Bedouins overran the station with the aid of a mountain gun and a howitzer, setting several wagons of a nearby train on fire. As it steamed out of the station, Lawrence blew the mine under the front bogies, knocking it off the rails. The Turks got the train rolling again, but the operation was a success. The attacks on the railway continued throughout 1917. During one, Lawrence blew up a locomotive with an electric mine. "We had a Lewis machine guns," he wrote in a letter to a friend, "and flung bullets through the sides. So they hopped out and took cover behind the embankment, and shot at us between the wheels at 50 yards. The Arabs brought up a Stokes mortar, and the Turks fled across open ground. Unfortunately for them," Lawrence continued, "the Lewis covered the open stretch. The whole job took 10 minutes, and they lost 70 killed, 30 wounded and 80 prisoners, for the loss of only 1 Arab. While the Arabs looted the train, another Turkish force arrived, nearly cutting off the Bedouins. I lost some baggage, and nearly myself," Lawrence added nonchalantly. In another letter about that same show, Lawrence confided, "I'm not going to last out this game much longer. Nerves going and temper wearing thin. This killing of Turks is horrible." Capture of Aqaba in 1917. Lawrence arranged a joint action with the Arab irregulars and forces including Orde Abu Tayr against the strategically located but lightly defended town of Aqaba. Aqaba fell to Lawrence and the Arab forces on the 6th of July, after a surprise overland attack. After Aqaba, Lawrence was promoted to Major, and General Sir Edmund Allenby, the new commander-in-chief of the Egyptian Expeditionary Force, agreed to his strategy for the revolt, stating after the war, "I gave him a free hand. His cooperation was marked by the utmost loyalty, and I never had anything but praise for his work, which, indeed, was invaluable throughout the campaign. He was the mainspring of the Arab movement and knew their language, their manners and their mentality. Lawrence now held a powerful position as an advisor to Faisal and a person who had Allenby's confidence. Battle of Tafile in January 1918, Lawrence fought in the Battle of Tafile, an important region southeast of the Dead Sea, together with Arab regulars under the command of Jafar Pasha al-Askari. The battle was a defensive engagement that turned into an offensive rout and was described in the official history of the war as a brilliant feat of arms. Lawrence was awarded the Distinguished Service Order for his leadership at Tafile and was promoted to lieutenant colonel. The battle took the lives of 400 Turks and captured more than 200 prisoners. By the summer of 1918, the Turks were offering a substantial reward for Lawrence's capture, with one officer writing in his notes, "Though a price of £15,000 has been put on his head by the Turks, no Arab has, as yet, attempted to betray him. The Sharif of Mecca, king of the Hejaz, has given him the status of one of his sons, and he is just the finely tempered steel that supports the whole structure of our influence in Arabia. He is a very inspiring gentleman adventurer, full of Damascus." Lawrence was involved in the build-up to the capture of Damascus in the final weeks of the war. He was not present at the city's formal surrender, much to his disappointment and contrary to instructions which he had issued. Having arrived several hours after the city had fallen, Lawrence entered Damascus around 9 a.m. on the 1st of October 1918, but was the third arrival of the day. The first was the 10th Australian Light Horse Brigade, led by Major A.C.N. Harry Olden, who formally accepted the surrender of the city from acting Governor Emir said. Lawrence was instrumental in establishing a provisional Arab government under Faisal in newly liberated Damascus, which he had envisioned as the capital of an Arab state. Faisal's rule as king, however, came to an abrupt end in 1920, after the Battle of Maesloun, when the French forces of General Gouraud entered Damascus under the command of General Mariano Goibet, destroying Lawrence's dream of an independent Arabia. During the closing years of the war, Lawrence sought to convince his superiors in the British government that Arab independence was in their interests, with mixed success. The secret Sykes-Picot Agreement between France and Britain contradicted the promises of independence that he had made to the Arabs and frustrated his work. In 1918, he cooperated with war correspondent Lowell Thomas for a short period. During this time, Thomas and his cameraman Harry Chase shot a great deal of film and many photographs, which Thomas used in a highly lucrative film that toured the world after the war. Lowell Thomas went to Jerusalem where he met Lawrence, whose enigmatic figure in Arab uniform fired his imagination. With Allenby's permission, he linked up with Lawrence for a brief couple of weeks. Returning to America, Thomas, early in 1919, started his lectures, supported by moving pictures of veiled women, Arabs in their picturesque robes, camels and dashing Bedouin cavalry, which took the nation by storm. After running at Madison Square Garden in New York, on being asked to come to England, he made the condition he would do so if asked by the king and given Drury Lane or Covent Garden. He opened at Covent Garden on the 14th of August 1919.